Mhm. Namaskar, welcome to Inside 20 with Ashok Well, and today's show is very special. And I say this because the theme that we have chosen and the gentleman with compassionate heart as well as with his expertise in the field of legal system of America, of New York, especially what is appealing and inspiring about the gentleman you are about to meet is the decision that he took after finishing his law education to serve in a way that would affect common men and those who cannot afford this legal help. So there is a legal aid society which was formed over 100 years ago, but attorney in charge Satish Nooriji is a part of this for almost 2 decades. That's not a long time, or it's a long time. Namaste, welcome.
Mr. Ashokji, thank you for having me. It's very nice to be here.
Such a pleasure having you. So, as we sometimes feel like going from the flashback or the formulative moments of one's life, why did you opted for studying law? Was there any role model?
Well, you know, the role models for an Indian American person are limited. Most of us become doctors or engineers or pharmacists or accountants. Some are famous TV personalities like you. But you know, the biggest role model is Gandhiji, you know, who became a lawyer to fight unfairness. And that's really the reason that I became a lawyer, is to fight unfairness, to set rights and wrongs, and to help people.
So you are remembering Gandhiji, and what you say is quite ideal, and I mean, it sounds impressive. Still, I'll go back. Still, I'll go back. As a child, when you are growing up, you are not looking up to Gandhiji. You are looking up to what is available and what kind of car people find fascinating and things like that. So these are the material objects which lures or attracts or becomes a sort of important key elements in your decision making process. So if you were inspired by Gandhiji, there must have been something that brushed you, maybe in school, maybe through some book or...
Yeah, well, you know, just to see how people deal with each other and to be involved in the debate over ideas. It's always been interesting to me. And as a child, I was a debater, and I liked to argue points and to see what is the truth. And it's easy to take that and go into law. But what's really troubling about most lawyers is they don't really work for any good purpose. So I also wanted to do something that's meaningful and that gives me the opportunity to help people.
So going towards your reference of truth, and jokingly people say that lawyers are liars, and you indirectly alluded to that many people are for different reasons in this legal profession. Based on your experience now, how do you see American legal system from the spectrum of legal aid society? Because you come across people who are really helpless, and I have read part of your upcoming book, hopefully that will also reach us soon, where you're talking about conviction. So there are so many things to talk to you, but let's first learn a little bit more about legal aid society.
Yeah, the Legal Aid Society is almost 100 years older than me, and it was started in New York City to help immigrants who were facing legal problems. And what's been true since legal aid was founded is that the legal system is skewed in favor of people who have lots of money and lots of power. So it's a real David and Goliath system. where the little person really has no way to win. And that appeals to me because I like to root for the underdog, the little person, the person without a voice, and to give them a chance to get what's due. And the things that we fight for at Legal Aid are really basic human rights, like the right to housing, the right to a good education, the right to live somewhere, and have proper immigration status and not be turned away because of your birth. These are basic things, and we as human beings should be fighting for these things for everyone so that people can live out their dreams and have equal opportunity. So Legal Aid is the public defender for New York City, so those who are accused of crimes and they can't afford lawyers. Legal Aid represents children who maybe are in unstable homes or are in the criminal justice system. And Legal Aid represents people in the civil system. And so what's really amazing about the civil legal system in this country is there's no right to a lawyer. If you lose your benefits, if you lose your job, if you lose your home, if you have a mortgage and somebody's going to foreclose on that mortgage, you don't have a right to a lawyer. And in a place like Queens, where we are and where I work, many people are immigrants. English is not their first language. And when faced with the challenge of fighting for their home, or fighting for a proper education for their kid, or fighting against their boss because they're not being paid a proper wage, they're powerless. And so Legal Aid tries to right these wrongs to help as many people as we can, but we're only 80 people in my office, and there's millions of people in Queens who need help. So it's a real challenge, but it's a really rewarding line of work as well.
So this rewarding line of work and your initial days with Legal Aid Society, do you consider someone as your mentor or who helped you understand the system and how to communicate? Because as you said, some of them are not good in English, but some of them have so low self-esteem that they cannot articulate where they are.
Yeah, to me, my best mentors have been my clients. People who have struggled, but they still have hope. They face long odds, but they still feel that things will work out. And that's inspiring, because if I were in some of their positions, I would give up. I don't have the strength. I was born lucky. I've been given many opportunities, and I've never faced the challenges that many of my clients have faced. I'll give you an example. I represented a young girl and her mother who were losing their home of 20 years because the landlord said, I don't want you anymore, and there was no law that protected them. So after a long battle in court, the judge said that the landlord was going to win, and they had to move. And she was about to start college, and this would have been a very, very difficult time to lose her home. And fortunately, her mother's employer passed away. Her mother worked as a housekeeper for a rich family in Long Island, and the employer left her some money in her will. And with that money, they were able to find a new place to live. So it worked out by luck.
But not by legal.
Not by legal, exactly. And so I felt terrible that I lost the case, and I apologized to them. And the little girl said to me, you gave us dignity, and you fought for us, and nobody else was doing that. And you gave us a chance.
Yeah.
And because of the time you gave us, this good thing happened to us.
Absolutely. So very nice, at least happy sort of ending in this story. But in general, based on what I heard from you, and I was also thinking, there are many, many cases where due to some, either call it power push, money also is one of the important power. So if you find yourself, your clients are losing because you cannot push them enough as compared to the other party, because these are, when we will talk a little more about eviction cases, these are landlords. They can hire other, I won't say that you are not a good liar, but they pay more than what you get paid.
Course.
So these people work probably. Anyway, the question is, do you ever felt a sense of helplessness? If that comes, how you bounce back.
Yeah, it's very, very easy to feel helpless and to feel hopeless and to feel like we're playing a game that we can't win. And why would we do that over and over again? But it's the dignity that we give our clients, or that our clients feel because they have somebody who's standing with them. Sometimes we do win. And most times what we do is we give people options. We expand the time that something bad will happen, and that gives people options. But it's very easy to feel powerless, to feel frustrated, and to feel helpless. And so when we feel that way, we try to change the system. We try to change the laws that are hurting people. We talk to elected officials and politicians, and we become active to change some of the rules and the laws that are hurting people. So it's a struggle, but it's a worthwhile struggle to undertake.
And now that we are fortunate to be sitting with you and talking to you, and some of our viewers will probably get some valuable information as well as would be empowered by what is available and what way to navigate through the system. And especially, let us look at the scenario from the point of view of an attorney that you faced or saw. COVID-19 has made the whole world totally different. We have seen things which we never would have imagined.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that has also resulted into people, of course, losing their job, and some where they found that they cannot pay rent continuously, etc. And so there must have been a lot of cases of eviction, etc. Set us the the framework that you have encountered due to COVID.
Yeah, the first thing that we realized last year when COVID began is where you live and whether you get COVID are linked. So if you live and you're wealthy and you live in Manhattan on Park Avenue, you're not going to get COVID. But if you're a school teacher or a nurse and you live in Queens, or a taxi driver or a restaurant worker, and you live with your brother and their family, or you're sleeping in the living room and you're all facing eviction, or you feel you don't have proper heat, or you don't have proper ventilation, or there's no hot water, you're likely to get COVID. You're likely to be out on the street. You may have to sleep at friends and relatives' places. You may get sick and go to the emergency room because you don't have proper health care. So what we realized is housing and public health are linked together. And we can't have healthy neighbors and productive citizens if we don't have proper housing. And our kids will sacrifice their futures because they're going to have lead poisoning or asthma because they live in cold apartments, or apartments in which there are rats and roaches. So that's one thing that we learned as a city, and we stopped evictions for the entire year. And evictions are on hold until September 1st. And so many said, well, what about the landlords? How are they going to get their rent? How are they going to pay their bills? And in fairness, we also stopped foreclosures from happening. So for any landlord who cannot pay their mortgage because they're not getting rent, their foreclosure is also stopped. So it is fair. And starting on June 1st, there's $2 billion of rent assistance coming to New York State. And that money will go to tenants and landlords so they can pay their bills and try to erase this damage that's happened over the past year and a half. So we learned a lot of lessons, but one lesson is we don't have to put people on the street to satisfy a business model where people are making money from providing housing. Housing isn't a commodity. It's not like rice or corn where you can sell it and trade it. It's important to people. People live there. They have roots. They have neighbors. They go to their local temple. They have their medical care there. It's very important. Where you live is very, very important, and we can't just easily exchange it as people do.
So we come back to some specific cases, but you also in your article on conviction, COVID-19 and the housing crisis mentions the need of proper, if I call it a training, or you compare with if there is a barber, he needs a license, and so the point that you are making there is that a landlord has no training, but he's running a business.
Yes.
And he's making money out of it. So talk to me more about what is the idea that you want to share here, and
Yeah.
is there any way that you see it reaches policymakers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So think about driving a taxi. You need to get a medallion or know somebody who has a medallion, get a driver's license, learn how to drive a taxi, take an exam. If you want to cut hair, you want to be a barber, you need to have a cosmetology license. To be a nurse or a doctor or an accountant, you need to have a license. But anyone can run a building of 10 families, 100 families, 1,000 families, and the only qualification you need is to have a checkbook, or to inherit the money from your family, or to inherit the building from your family. And so there is no check on whether landlords are able to run buildings, whether they can properly operate the boiler, provide heat and hot water. And so there's many situations where families are sick, they're not properly housed, and our system is broken. So our lawmakers need to monitor who is running buildings, what qualifications they have, and whether they are properly doing it. Otherwise, the model is how much money can someone extract from a property. And it doesn't matter if there's elderly people there, young children, sick people, families. The model we have now is how can I extract the most amount of money and spend the least amount of money. And that's not a proper way to live.
Unfortunately, that is how the market works, and when you are there running or rather renting homes as a business proposition, you're looking at cutting corners and sort of making most of it. And let's also look at the situation of immigrants. Many times the language barrier is there, but if it is not just language, the process of assimilating, acclimatizing, and finding your voice loud enough to raise when you need to raise it takes a lot of I would say guts, or many people come like they just want to be invisible, they just want to do their work, and if there's something happen, they would suffer silently as long as it works out. And you must have come across some people with these traits. So how do you address them, and what would be your message for people who feel a kind of fear around them, maybe sometimes because they don't have proper documents, or maybe there could be multiple reasons?
Many people, especially in Queens, if they don't have immigration status, they don't have a green card, or they're not citizens, they're afraid to complain. They think if they complain, immigration will find out, and they'll be deported, or they'll be separated from their family. And this is a very real fear. But fortunately, we live in New York City, where these things are not supposed to happen. The police and the fire department and the building inspectors and the lawyers like me, we don't call immigration. In fact, at the Legal Aid Society, we don't even ask for your immigration papers. We will help you no matter what your immigration status is. The second thing I'll say is that many people, and I've seen this over and over again, when they're exploited by others in this country, guess who it is who exploits them? Their own people. They come here trusting someone from their village, from their town, from their state, from their country, someone who speaks the same language. And those are the people who are exploiting. They're the ones who are not paying the proper wage, or housing people in illegal apartments, or making people work 7 days a week. They're not following the laws in New York and in the United States. And so people are fooled. They think this person is my own cousin. How can they exploit me? And yet it happens. And that's really, really dangerous. And people should be aware, this is unfortunately a place where you really can't trust anyone, but there are many laws that protect you, no matter where you're from, what your religion is, and whether you have immigration papers or not.
Well, let's come to the ground where people face problem, and some of our viewers must have also faced the situation where the landlord is not repairing as he should or she should. They keep on calling, no response. Now, what can they do in such situation?
Fortunately, tenants in New York can sue their landlords if they don't make repairs. It's illegal for a landlord to fail to meet the building conditions. And there are city inspectors. If you call 311, the city will send inspectors and examine all the problems that you may have in your apartment. And if your landlord doesn't fix those problems, they'll be fined, hundreds of dollars. And the tenant can also file a court case, and that will cost even more money for the landlord. So we have these systems in place, but many people don't know about it. And a lot of what I do is try to educate people. Like, you have these rights, and you have these these methods you can use to fight for your rights.
So many people are not used to fighting for rights. You mentioned about Mahatma Gandhi ji. He started in his own way, but many people feel that let's not just spoil our relationship. Let's just let it go, and then they keep on having situations where this month it was not repaired, second month it was not repaired. So that is one side. Second point, in spite of the clear instructions by the New York State government about not evicting, there were cases where landlords forced tenants for eviction. Did you come across some thing like that?
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, to answer your first question, many people will just say, let's just get along. And one of the things that I've heard over and over again is your relationship with your landlord is the second most important relationship in your life, and the first one being with your husband or your wife. And so there's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of stress, and so people sometimes say, I don't want to complain, I'm just going to let it go. But unfortunately, that affects you, and that affects your stress level, it affects your children. Are they going to be able to study? Are they going to be able to pass their exams if they don't have heat, if they're not able to take a shower, if it's cold, if there's no water? These things mean something, and the landlord's making plenty of money. They're making money every month on the rent, and the building itself has a value that they're going to recoup when they sell the building. And so there's no reason not to complain, because these are basic needs. The other question, I forgot what the other question was.
No, basically other question also is related to the situation where
illegal evictions. Yeah, so over the last year, many landlords have just changed the locks when a tenant goes to the store, or they might fear that a tenant is coughing and they have COVID, so let me just kick them out in the middle of the night, or when they go visit a relative or something. And this has been very common in Queens, where tenants and landlords are living very close together. And it's also happening because many tenants weren't able to pay the rent. What's really amazing, and people don't realize, is more than half of the people who live in New York City pay half of their monthly income to their living expenses, to their rent. So 50 cents of every dollar goes to their rent. And so if you lose your job temporarily, you're not going to be able to pay your rent. If you get sick, if you have COVID, or if a family member gets sick or has COVID or loses their job or passes away, your entire financial picture is going to be upside down, and you can't pay your rent. So many thousands of people were in that position over the last year. And landlords said, I don't want to wait. If I don't get my rent and I can't go to court because the courts have stopped the evictions, I'm just going to change the locks. I'm going to turn off the electricity. I'm going to turn off the heat. I'm going to yell at them when they come home. I'm bang on the door. We saw all of these things happening to people, and it's very scary, especially for immigrants who are afraid that they can't complain. And so we help many people in these situations.
And you have also looked up to housing as a human right issue, which of course it is. So, in the limited time that we have with you, any additional information based on the new law related to renters and landlords in New York State, about which our viewers should know?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there is a rent assistance program that will open on June 1st. It's $2 billion of rental assistance, and almost anyone can qualify, even if you don't have a green card. So they will help pay the last year of rent, and if your landlord takes that rent, you have the right to stay in that apartment for another year. So it's a very, very big deal. Anyone who's nervous or afraid or feels guilty that they owe rent and they think they're just going to walk away and start again and give up their home, they shouldn't do that. They should wait until June 1st and apply for this rent assistance program and try to save their homes, because that's the purpose of this program.
So June 1st is right there.
Tuesday.
But if
yeah.
they want to learn more about it, is Legal Aid Society going to help them?
Yes, we're going to help as many people as we can apply for these rent assistance programs. And in the near future, we're going to be representing thousands of people who are going to be taken to court for eviction.
And somehow time has its own way of moving at a fast pace. So in the final 2 minutes that we have, what is the key message that you feel you want to convey, not just to those who are renting, but also to landlords?
Yeah, I mean, the message is that tenants have rights, and no one should be afraid of complaining and of asserting their rights. And there are many lawyers like me in New York City who can help you. So don't be afraid because of your immigration status or any other reason to assert your rights. You and your family have the right to a safe, decent, and habitable apartment. And to those landlords, I mean, I understand that many in our community are landlords, and they maybe haven't gotten the rent over the last year, and they're struggling too. There are also many, many programs to help people who have mortgages. There are mortgage assistance programs, there are low interest loans that are available to many small landlords. And so we all have to work together. We have to get through COVID. We have maybe 6 months left, hopefully, not more. And let's work together. Let's not turn on each other and fight each other. And let's make the city stronger over the near future.
Absolutely. And in order to make city stronger, we need to be strong. And when I say we need to be strong, we need to be aware what are our rights, and we should not be shy of speaking for ourselves. And that is the key message with Attorney at Large, Legal Aid Society, Queens Satish Nuriji. We got, this is very important, and as we all love peace, but peace also comes with some price, and that price of living with dignity is demanding, and so is democratic system. It wants us to be alert about our rights and speak up. Empowering us with this insight and inspiring us to think like that is my guest, Satish Nuriji. So thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.
So while I thank him, I wish you all the best, and thanks for being with us. This is Ashok Vyas.